the common challenge which cuts across all data centers is the efficiency aspect. That is one. And the second aspect today is in terms of the way I look at it is in terms of being flexible and adaptable. Let me comment on point 2 first. What's happening in the market is, I mean, we've all seen the data explosion which has happened in the past couple of years. And this behavior is likely to continue for a few more years. And with this data explosion, what's happened is the data centers have had to process more data and in terms of scale up their operations. That's one aspect. 2, businesses are now reaching out to distant consumers, distant markets, so geographies they're expanding. Now, the challenge with all this is that you need to be able to be quite flexible and adaptable in terms of scaling up quickly, right? So that is one of the major challenges which they face today. The second aspect, which was my first point, was in terms of efficiency. Traditionally, by design, what's happening is that the data centers, when they are designed based on business continuity in mind, which fundamentally means that they have built-in excess compute capacity, they have built-in excess power, excess space. Now, at the time of designing it and building it, it's all fine. But let's say 2-3 years down the line, when you need to scale up, it's very difficult for them to identify exactly how much spare capacity is available in each rack. Now, if you've got 1,000 racks, it's not that every rack would have an identical amount of spare power, identical amount of physical space which is available. While when you walk through the data center and you walk through the aisles, you will be able to see some free space available in each rack. But the challenge is how much power is available in each rack. You don't know whether there is power available and to what extent. So even if you want to scale up in that particular rack, that information is not available easily. So again, they have to do some kind of an audit. And the challenge with this kind of a scenario is that these audits are at a given point in time. It's not a real-time continuous basis. They do not have a realistic trend as to what's happening in their data center at any given point of time. Until they understand that, always be a challenge. This has got to do with what's being talked about a lot today in terms of AI coming into play, artificial intelligence coming into play, and trying to see how AI can help in data centers. Now, for any AI to be effective, you need to have a certain amount of critical data or a certain amount of critical mass of data for it to have some meaningful, you could take out some meaningful interpretations from it. So the first step is assimilation of data. Second step is machine learning. And then the third step is writing algorithms based on the machine learning for it to be able to take some necessary actions. Now, when we talk about connected devices in that context, today data centers or the devices within data centers are not connected for it to be able to generate that data for the machine learning to happen. So we are at, I would say, at ground zero on that. But the good news is that people have started realizing this, more so from the point of view of efficiency. The other aspect to in the data center using AI is, let's say, the security aspect. Okay? Now, that's a huge aspect which everybody talks about, and everybody's taking lots of steps today. The given thing is that everybody is trying to protect the compute side, and a lot of technologies, tools have been built to protect the compute side of security. But as we move into more connected devices, as you say, bringing IoT into the space, you're also connecting, let's say, your UPSs, you're connecting your printers, you're connecting your air conditioning devices onto the network, which were traditionally not connected. Okay. Right. Now, the fact of the matter is, since the focus has been there only on the compute side, there is not adequate focus on these peripheral devices. But the reality is that since these devices are also sitting on the network, they are potential vulnerable points for security breach. A very simple example can be, if there is no print command given to a printer, but the printer is trying to access the network to do something, that means it is doing something which is out of its contextual behavior. Right? So that's where AI will come into play and say, hey, this device is not supposed to be doing this without any command given. There is some red alert or something needs to be flagged off. Okay, so when you look at efficiency, you want to look at space. Okay. Now, when I'm looking at the floor space in a data center, I mean, this was some back of the envelope calculation which I've done recently. Now, if you have a 10,000 square feet data center, the physical space utilized by the racks, only the racks, is only about 28%. Okay. Rest of the space is going into, let's say, the gray space, which is the facility side. Then in the white space, you've got the area for where the air conditioning rack units are kept. And again, in a data center, you've got hot aisles and cold aisles. So if you remove all this floor space and only look at the floor space utilized by the physical rack, it's only about 28% of the whole data center. Now that 28% of the data center is the only productive part for the business. Everything else is physical infrastructure supporting that 28%, right? So it becomes imperative to maximize this 28%. So, I mean, as I said, if you're looking at a 10,000 square feet of a data center, you are actually looking at utilizing 2,800 square feet. So 2,800 square feet is only the productive part. So if you've got a 42U rack, then you need to be able to grow vertically, make that 42U into 48U, make it into 52U. Okay. So that's how you are trying to optimize space, because that is the most premium commodity within a data center in terms of the fixed asset, right? But it does not stop there. I mean, I just cannot replace a 42U rack with a 48 or a 52U rack. I need to be able to check if the floor has the load-bearing capacity to take on additional load, one. Two, while I'm increasing the height, can I increase power in it? Is there sufficient power available? Not available. There's no point going vertically if I can't, provide power to it. The third aspect is, if I'm putting devices, obviously these devices need to be connected on a network. So I'm looking at network switches and patch panels. And so is there space for that, or if there is no space for that? So it's not one element, it's like a snowball or a dominoes effect. If I'm doing one, I need to be able to touch upon all the points and ensure that all these things are available. So then when you look at efficiency, then you're driving here efficiency in terms of space. Then you're looking at efficiency in terms of power at the same time. And obviously, if I'm increasing the height, I'm putting in more servers or putting in more high capacity servers, obviously I'm generating more heat. Then I also need to look at the cooling aspect. Less than 10%. I cannot put a finger and say it is 6, 7, 8%, but I would say they're definitely in single digits, anywhere between 8 to 10%. The way I'm looking at. So they may be connected at maybe at the rack level, but not at the device level. If you have planned for it intelligently, for example, if you have taken 3-phase power to the rack instead of taking single phase to the rack, originally as a data center, and now that you need to expand and scale up, okay, if you have taken single phase, if you want to scale up and let's say add double the capacity in terms of from 16 amp to 32 amps, your infrastructure costs go up by 100%. But at the time of design, if you have already provisioned from 3-phase, your upfront costs are maybe about 30 to 35% higher. But in the long term, that 30-35% far outweighs and far pays off by itself. Okay. And if you already designed, let's say, to provision for a 1500 kg rack initially rather than go for a 1000 kg rack in terms of load bearing, the incremental cost on the rack side would be about 10 to 12%. But again, you are saving that floor space, which is far, far more expensive, okay, than these incremental costs. So overall, I would say is the incremental cost when you're building a data center initially may go up from 30 to 40%, but you are easily saving 100 to 150% in the long term. But the interesting demand trend which took off was the remote management of their infrastructure. Okay. One of the products which Raritan manufactures and supplies is what you call KVM, which facilitates remote management of your compute devices and network devices without having physically to go to that premise. And these are so advanced to the extent that even if your server is down, you can remotely switch it on, reload the OS, etc. You don't have to send somebody to physically do that task. Now, we have seen an uptake of nearly about 35 to 38% thanks to pandemic on that. Especially keeping this context in mind, obviously we have seen a shift away from the metro cities. Obviously, there was a huge aggregation of data centers in category A metros. Now you see category B, C, D towns. There are compute data centers coming into play. I may not necessarily call them data centers, but you will definitely see computer rooms coming in with 3 to 4 racks also coming into play. Smaller towns are becoming therefore more important in terms of setting up the infrastructure. The good news today is that in terms of connectivity, we have damn good connectivity available pretty much across the country. So which is facilitating and making it easier for data centers to be available into, I would say, smaller towns as well. So that's one thing which we are definitely seeing. The other aspect, obviously, is the investment which the government is doing in terms of trying to bring up straight data centers and trying to digitize a lot of its processes and system. So that is also another aspect which is coming into play. So the government itself is also setting up a lot of data centers in various states, which is, again, when you look at from the consumer point of view, the consumer is not only acting with the private player, he's also now starting interacting with the government services as well. So there is a bifurcation in terms of data, where the data is going. It's going to both the private and the government side. So you will see a bifurcation on that side as well. Obviously, what we've also seen is the fact that because you want to scale up quickly, businesses are not able to do so themselves. So you are seeing a lot of investment in the colo space, which are coming into the market today. So there are a lot of colos who are setting up infrastructure to cater to this demand which is coming up. The final aspect is the global players. Obviously, India is a big market. It has a huge population, and it is very tech savvy in terms of using devices. So you are seeing a decent amount of global data centers or global players coming into the market as well to address this need. So overall, the data center market is looking very good. There is growth all around and in all pretty much all segments.